My life used to be simple, quiet, ordinary, and filled with the usual ups and downs of a middle-class family. We didn't have much, but we had peace. My parents worked hard to provide for us, and we cherished the little joys of life. But everything changed the moment my aunt moved into our lives. At first, she appeared to be the kind of woman who only wanted to help. To outsiders, she was polite, generous, and full of advice. But behind closed doors, her true nature slowly began to reveal itself. She wasn't just an aunt who cared too much. She was a woman obsessed with control. Power ran through her veins like poison. My aunt never married. People in the extended family whispered that she was too proud or too selfish to settle down. Some said no man could tolerate her. Others claimed she deliberately stayed single because she didn't want to share authority with anyone. When her financial situation started declining, she asked my parents if she could stay with us for a while. My mother, being the kind-hearted person she is, welcomed her with open arms. At first, it felt like nothing more than an adjustment. She had her own room, her own space. But soon, she began planting her presence in every corner of our household. She started small. Don't let the children stay up late. This curry needs more salt. Why are you wasting money on such cheap furniture? You should have asked me first. At first, my parents brushed it off as harmless opinions. After all, she was family. But her suggestions quickly turned into commands, and her commands into rules. The scariest part wasn't how she spoke, it was how she convinced people to believe she was right. My aunt had a way with words. She could twist any argument until the other person doubted themselves. One evening, my father mentioned he wanted to invest a small amount of money in repairing the old car we owned. My aunt immediately jumped in. Greater than, that's foolish. Cars are liabilities. Don't you care about your children's future? Put that money into savings, or better yet, let me help you manage it. I know exactly how to grow your finances. My father hesitated. He didn't like giving control away, but she was relentless. She kept drilling into his mind that his decisions were reckless and that only she truly cared about the family's well-being. Within weeks, she had convinced him to hand over financial decisions to her, and that was only the beginning. My aunt had a special talent for turning people against each other. If she caught me arguing with my younger brother, she'd quietly whisper to him later, greater than, your sister doesn't really want the best for you. She's jealous of how smart you are. Then, she'd come to me and say, greater than your brother doesn't respect you. He only listens because your parents force him to. It was like she thrived on chaos. The more cracks she created in our family, the more powerful she felt. And it worked. Arguments became more frequent. The once peaceful atmosphere of our home was replaced by tension so thick, you could almost taste it in the air. I'll never forget the night my mother cried herself to sleep because of my aunt. It started when Mom bought a set of new curtains for the living room. They weren't expensive, just something fresh to brighten up the house. The moment my aunt saw them, she scoffed. These look cheap. Honestly, do you want guests to think you can't afford better? Why didn't you ask me first? Mom tried to laugh it off. It's just curtains, she said. But my aunt wouldn't let it go. She criticized the color, the fabric, the way they were hung. Then she went a step further. She told Dad that Mom was being irresponsible with money. That night, Mom broke down. She whispered to me, I don't even feel like this is my home anymore. And that's when I realized we weren't living in a house with an aunt. We were living under her rule. Every day that passed, her claws dug deeper into our lives. She wasn't satisfied until every decision, every moment of peace, and every ounce of happiness was under her control. But here's the thing about manipulators. They always overplay their hand. And one day, her obsession with power and control would cost her dearly. Not just emotionally, not just socially, but financially. My manipulative, power-hungry aunt who tormented my family for years was destined to lose everything. And when the dust settled, she would be out $300,000. This is how it all began. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Our home no longer felt like a safe place. It felt like a cage. Every decision, big or small, had to pass through my aunt first. Asterisk. At first, it was about curtains and groceries. But soon, she began sinking her claws into the very foundation of our lives. Money. Asterisk. My father had always been cautious with money. He wasn't rich, but he managed our expenses wisely. But once my aunt realized he respected her financial advice, she used that trust like a weapon. Asterisk. Don't waste money on repairing that car. I know a man who can get you a better deal, she'd say. Asterisk. Why let your salary sit in the bank? Give it to me. I'll invest it. I know the market better than you. Asterisk. Her words were sharp, but her tone was smooth, persuasive like honey, laced with poison. Asterisk. At first, Dad resisted. But she didn't give up. She kept repeating her arguments, finding new ways to humiliate his judgment. She'd compare him to other relatives. Asterisk. Your cousin built a second house. Why are you still struggling with one? If you'd listened to me earlier, you'd be far ahead by now. Asterisk. Day by day, her words chipped away at his confidence. And eventually, he gave in. Asterisk. It wasn't just Dad she controlled. She wanted all of us under her thumb. Asterisk. If Mom bought something small for the house, my aunt would scold her in front of everyone. Asterisk. Do you think money grows on trees? You are reckless. You'll ruin this family. Asterisk. If I wanted to go out with friends, she'd shake her head disapprovingly. Asterisk. Young girls shouldn't waste time like this. Stay home. Learn something useful instead. Asterisk. Even my little brother wasn't safe. He once asked for a new pair of sneakers for school. She exploded. Asterisk. Sneakers? Do you think we're millionaires? Walk barefoot if you have to. It'll build character. Asterisk. The worst part? She always said these things in front of others, making us feel small, foolish, and guilty. Asterisk. A manipulator knows the art of isolation, and my aunt was a master. She started by cutting us off from extended family. Asterisk. Whenever relatives invited us over, she'd whisper poison into Dad's ear. Asterisk. Don't go. They'll only laugh at you. They don't respect you. Besides, why waste money on gifts when they've never done anything for you? Asterisk. Slowly, the invitation stopped. People grew distant, thinking we were the ones ignoring them. Asterisk. Our family of 4 became prisoners in our own home, while my aunt stood guard at the gates. Asterisk. One night, I found Mom sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at her hands. Asterisk. Mom? I whispered. Are you okay? Asterisk. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I feel like I don't exist anymore. Everything I do is wrong in her eyes. Even your father listens to her more than me. This isn't the life I wanted for you kids. Asterisk. Her voice cracked, and my heart broke. My once strong, cheerful mother was being drained of her spirit. Asterisk. That night, I swore silently I wouldn't let this go on forever. Asterisk. The turning point came when my aunt convinced Dad to let her manage a big chunk of his savings. Asterisk. Trust me, she said with a sly smile. I'll double it in no time. You'll thank me later. Asterisk. Dad hesitated, but she kept pushing, accusing him of being irresponsible if he didn't trust her. Finally, with heavy reluctance, he handed over the money. Asterisk. Mom begged him not to, but he silenced her with frustration. Asterisk. Why you always doubt her? She's family. She only wants what's best for us. Asterisk. I could see the triumph in my aunt's eyes. She had won another battle. Asterisk. But victory made her greedy. She started spending more lavishly, ordering expensive clothes for herself, redecorating her room, and even buying gifts for outsiders to show off her generosity. Asterisk. When Mom questioned her, she snapped, asterisk, "Don't you dare lecture me. This is family money. I'll decide how it's used." Asterisk. Tension escalated daily. Arguments filled the air. Silence lingered in the halls, and the warmth of our home turned cold. Asterisk. What none of us realized was that this was only the beginning. My aunt's hunger for control would grow darker, her manipulation more dangerous. Asterisk. And soon, her own greed would lead her straight into a trap one she would never escape from. The storm inside our home had grown unbearable. By now, my aunt had positioned herself as the head of the household. She controlled the money, the decisions, even our daily routines. But what she didn't know was that her arrogance was planting the seeds of her own downfall. One evening, I found Dad sitting silently in the living room, staring at the floor. His shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. "Dad?" I asked gently. He sighed. "Maybe your aunt is right. Maybe I've been wrong all my life. Maybe I'm just not capable of leading this family." My heart sank. My father, once strong, confident, and respected, was now questioning his entire worth. And it was all because of her constant attacks. In that moment, I realized something important. Manipulators don't just steal money, they steal dignity. My aunt, on the other hand, was thriving. She strutted around the house like a queen, issuing orders. "Wake up earlier. You're lazy. Don't eat so much rice. You'll get fat. Stop wasting time reading novels. Do something useful." Every word she spoke dripped with superiority. One day, she even humiliated Mom in front of neighbors. When Mom offered them tea in her simple, modest cups, my aunt scoffed loudly. "Excuse the cheap crockery." My sister never had good taste. The neighbors laughed nervously, but Mom's face turned crimson with shame. That was the moment I saw something snap inside her eyes. Things took a darker turn when Dad received his annual bonus. He wanted to save it for my college tuition. But of course, my aunt had other plans. College? For her? She sneered, pointing at me. "Girls don't need fancy degrees. They get married anyway. That money should go into my investment scheme." Mom argued fiercely, for once refusing to back down. "That money is for our children, not for you." But my aunt slammed her fist on the table. "Do you think you know better than me? If you don't trust me, fine. But don't come crying when your daughter ends up a failure." Dad, torn between them, made the worst decision of his life. He gave the money to my aunt. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, rage burning inside me. My dreams were being stolen, my mother was being crushed, and my father was being brainwashed. Enough was enough. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and whispered to myself, "She thinks she's untouchable. She thinks she can destroy us without consequence. But I won't let her win. One day, she will pay for every tear, every insult, every sleepless night she's caused. And when it happens, she'll lose more than she ever imagined." It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a vow. I began paying closer attention to her actions. She wasn't as smart as she thought. She left trails everywhere. Receipts from expensive purchases, phone calls she tried to hide, even whispers of investment deals that didn't sound legitimate. She wasn't investing money, she was spending it recklessly, flaunting her false sense of power. And that's when the plan began to form in my mind. Revenge isn't born overnight. It grows slowly, fueled by pain and betrayal. Each insult she hurled, each dollar she stole, each wound she inflicted on my family only strengthened my resolve. My aunt believed she had us under her thumb. But little did she know, I was already plotting her downfall. And when the time came, her greed would lead her straight into a trap that would cost her not just respect, not just family, but $300,000. I learned quickly that anger alone wasn't enough. To beat a manipulator like my aunt, I needed two things: patience and evidence. She was clever with words and charm. She could twist conversations until everyone forgot who was right. I couldn't beat her on words. I had to beat her on facts. I started small and quiet. No dramatic confrontations, no rash posts on social media. I became a shadow in my own house. Every receipt she carelessly tossed in the trash I fished out. Every investment contract she left on the kitchen table, I scanned with my phone. I learned how she communicated with her contacts, casual calls at midnight, coded messages in text threads, and a separate notebook where she scribbled names and numbers. It was sloppy, but her pride made her sloppy. She trusted that nobility and blood would protect her. One afternoon, while pretending to clean her room, I opened a drawer and found a thin envelope labeled "Investments, Urgent." Inside were photocopies of transfer receipts, large sums wired to unfamiliar accounts, invoices for consultants who didn't exist, and, worst of all, a spreadsheet showing family funds labeled as seed capital for an agri-development project she had pitched to Dad. My stomach dropped as I totaled the columns. The numbers climbed quickly: $40K, $60K, $20K. Each transfer adding up until the sum hit a figure that made me dizzy. $300,000. It was real. The money didn't vanish into thin air. It had funneled into accounts and companies under her control, and then, I suspected, into purchases she paraded as generosity: jewelry, a new car, cash gifts to distant acquaintances. She had convinced my father to hand her what should have been our future. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I copied everything. I couldn't do this alone. The web of her lies extended outside our home, and I needed people who would speak truth into the open, not out of malice, but out of justice. First, I went to my cousin, Asen. He lived in the next town and had always been fair-minded. In a hushed conversation over tea, I laid out the receipts, the spreadsheet, and the list of transfers. At first he frowned, disbelieving, but as I walked him through the documents, the color drained from his face. This is embezzlement," he whispered. "Are you sure these are transfers from your father's account?" "Yes," I said. "She's been manipulating him into handing over savings. She's even falsified investment invoices." Asen didn't hesitate. "We need to get an accountant, someone independent. And you should copy everything to an external drive. Don't keep these files on your mother's laptop where she could find them." He was right. That night, we cloned the files onto a secure flash drive and hid it in a place my aunt would never think to look: the false bottom of an old jewelry box. Next, I reached out to Uncle Imran, a retired teacher who still had the community's respect. He agreed to host a family meeting under the guise of discussing relatives' welfare. I needed a neutral public stage where accusations couldn't be brushed off as petty family drama. The plan was not to humiliate her with yelling. My goal was to make the facts speak loud enough that even those who admired her couldn't deny them. On the day of the meeting, our house was full of relatives. The living room smelled of boiled milk and cardamom. The air shimmered with polite conversations. My aunt arrived late, dressed in a new coat that glittered just enough to draw envy. She took her throne-like seat and scanned the room with the practiced nonchalance of a woman who expected praise. Uncle Imran began with small talk, then steered the conversation toward family finances. "For transparency," he said. My aunt smiled. She loved transparency that matched her script. I sat to my mother's left, fingers intertwined with hers under the table, a silent anchor. When the time was right, Hassan slid the external drive across to Uncle Imran and whispered, "Play it." Confused murmurs filled the room as Uncle Imran connected the drive to his laptop and opened a folder labeled Evidence. The first file was a PDF of transfer receipts. The second opened to her investment contracts, and the third was the spreadsheet with the big, bold number at the bottom: $300,000. I watched my aunt's face as the laptop screen revealed what I'd found. At first, she blinked, like a performer out of practice. Then her lips tightened. "My dear family," she started, voice smooth. "I can explain. These are benevolent investments. I did this for us." "No, you didn't," I said, and for the first time in months, my voice didn't shake. "You took our savings and labeled them as investments to hide your spending." These transfers came from my father's account. "We have bank confirmations." A hush fell. The cousins shifted. The neighbors, who had gathered at the edge of the room, leaned forward. "She's lying," my aunt said, the word loud but brittle. "I used the money to help this family." "I wouldn't. You sold the idea of an agri-development project to Dad and siphoned funds into shell companies registered under your friends' names," Austin cut in. He had the accountant's calculations ready. Ledger entries matched to her purchases. "You used family funds to buy a car, jewelry, and to make cash gifts that were never recorded. You fabricated invoices for consultants who don't exist." My aunt's composure cracked. She stood up abruptly, eyes blazing. "This is slander. You'll regret." But Uncle Imran raised a hand. "We will not tolerate theft in this family. We will involve the bank and the authorities if necessary." He looked at my father. "Do you want to confirm these transfers, or do you want to continue being deceived?" My father, for so long lost in a fog, looked at the screen, then at his hands, and broke down. I gave the money because I trusted her," he said. "I thought she knew better. I didn't know she was spending it like this. We didn't want a public scandal to tear apart the family beyond repair. But justice has a way of demanding accountability." The relatives, once they saw the cold numbers and the ledger of selfish purchases, rallied quietly. Several of them offered to accompany us to the bank the next morning. At the bank, the officer who reviewed the transfers raised his eyebrows. "We can trace the accounts and put a temporary freeze on suspicious withdrawals if you file a formal complaint," he said. "A formal complaint." The words carried weight. My mother, trembling but firm, signed the documents. She pressed the pen hard, like someone anchoring a ship in a storm. Word spread beyond our neighborhood. A few neighbors who had once laughed at my aunt's scorn now came forward with their own stories. Small loans never repaid, favors that mysteriously evaporated into gifts for the aunt. A chorus of grievances grew, and with it, pressure mounted. My aunt, sensing the walls closing in, tried to bargain. She promised to repay. She promised to sell her new car, to liquidate jewelry, to bring in witnesses, but her promises were thin paper against the facts we had. Bank's preliminary investigation revealed transfers to 3 separate companies that, on paper, were registered under friends' names. Those companies, when traced, showed expenditures that matched the purchases we'd cataloged. The accountant's report, cold and professional, estimated the recoverable amount and highlighted suspicious patterns, indicating misuse of family funds. By the time the local legal advisor laid out the options, it was clear we could pursue civil claims to recover the money or press criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. The latter would be messy, public, and possibly ruinous. The former offered a pathway to reclaim what was lost. My aunt's bravado evaporated as documents circled and witnesses lined up. She realized the applause she once bought with small favors had no value when, weighed against proof, neighbors who had once echoed her criticisms now refused to bat her story. A jeweler confirmed the pieces were bought under her name with the same transfers. A car dealership produced invoices matching the bank entries. Even the consultant she had cited failed to answer calls, his number dead, his email bouncing back. The civil suit moved faster than we expected. Without public spectacle, the bank helped freeze remaining assets linked to the transfers. The court ordered an inventory of her possessions and a temporary injunction preventing her from dissipating assets. As evidence mounted, She was forced into a corner, to settle, to repay, or to face prolonged litigation. In the end, she chose to negotiate. Pride had always been her shield, but even pride can be paid off with paper. The settlement terms were harsh: repayment plans, forced liquidation of her valuables, and a formal apology that she had to read before the family. The day she read the apology, her voice cracked. No one clapped. The words were legalistic, empty of the charm she once wielded. The ledger, the cold truth of numbers, had stripped her of performance. Calculations, bank reconciliations, and legal fees whittled away at the mountainous figure. But the net loss in her control and possessions equaled roughly $300,000. Not all of that sum came back. Some purchases were irreversible. Some funds had been spent beyond recovery. But what mattered most was the scale of the fall. She had to sign documents agreeing to a payment schedule and cede ownership of assets purchased with family funds. The car was repossessed. Jewelry went to auction to help cover losses. Shell companies dissolved, names scrubbed from registration books. Her social standing, the footing she had used to intimidate others, collapsed like a house of cards. When the dust settled, our house breathed again. My father's shoulders straightened over months as he slowly reclaimed his dignity. My mother smiled again, not at once, but in small, fragile ways, humming while cooking, tending to the garden, speaking without the fear of dismissal. I felt a quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with the dollars recovered. It was the restitution of peace. My aunt left shortly after the settlement. She moved to a small rented flat 2 towns away. No one visited her there. She had money saved for a while, but the power she craved was gone. People no longer deferred to her. The neighbors who once hung on her words now spoke around her as if she were a cautionary tale. She had cost us $300,000, but she had also cost herself what she valued most: respect, influence, and family. This was not a vengeance born of malice. It was a fight to restore dignity and protect a family. The story doesn't end with papers signed and assets recovered. There are consequences that linger, forgiveness that may never come, and wounds that take years to heal. The house was quieter after she left. No more footsteps echoing like a drill sergeant. No more biting remarks at the dinner table. For the first time in years, our walls felt like a home again, not a battlefield. But healing wasn't instant. Dad carried shame like a heavy coat. Even after we recovered some of the money, he often muttered, "How could I be so blind? How could I let her do this to us?" Mom would place a hand on his arm and whisper, "Because you trusted. That's not a weakness. That's who you are." I admired her grace. Despite all the humiliation she endured, she never allowed bitterness to consume her. Instead, she started rebuilding, not just the finances, but our sense of unity. She introduced family dinners again, simple meals filled with laughter. Slowly, Dad began to laugh too. For me, the entire ordeal became fuel. I studied harder than ever, driven by a fierce determination to secure the future my aunt had tried to snatch away. Late at night, I'd whisper to myself, "She didn't win. She never will." When my college acceptance letter finally arrived, I saw tears in Dad's eyes. This time, they weren't tears of defeat, but of pride. Word traveled about my aunt's fall from grace. In the new town where she lived, she tried to reinvent herself. But reputations have a way of catching up. Neighbors whispered, "That's the woman who lost her family's fortune." Relatives avoided her at weddings. Old friends stopped returning her calls. Her new life was smaller, lonelier, quieter. But she wasn't finished. 1 year later, we received a letter in the mail, addressed to Dad. Inside was a handwritten note in her unmistakable script. "I regret what happened, but you must understand. Everything I did for control. Control is survival. Without it, I am nothing. I cannot live small. One day, you'll realize I wasn't wrong, only ahead of my time. Attached was a business card for a new consulting agency she had launched. Different name, same scheme. My blood ran cold. She hadn't learned. She hadn't changed. Her hunger for power was a flame that would never die. But this time, we weren't naive. Dad threw the card into the fireplace. The flames devoured it quickly, just as her schemes always devoured trust. She can chase power all she wants, Mom said, her voice steady. But not with us. Not ever again. Revenge, I realized, isn't about destroying someone else. True revenge is reclaiming what they tried to steal. Dignity, peace, and future. She lost $300,000. We lost years of trust. But in the end, we gained something she never could, freedom from her shadow. And as the flames consumed the last trace of her letter, I whispered one final vow to myself. Some battles you win by fighting. Others, you win by walking away stronger. And we walked away stronger than she could ever imagine.